I'd like to take a few seconds to clear up a little confusion we've been having in past seminars. People are confusing this seminar with First Union National Bank. We are not the bank. We have nothing to do with the bank. First Union Securities is a subsidiary of First Union National Bank, and the Schultz and Weinstein Financial Advisory Group is a subsidiary of First Union Securities. Okay? We both sponsor and fund this seminar in order to help educate you to the many different aspects of financial planning. So, without further ado, I'd like to turn the program over to my partner, Rich.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a belief that each and every one of us has a right to what we call financial dignity. And what we mean by financial dignity is where retirement becomes optional because the assets are in place to now be comfortable and work becomes optional for you. But unfortunately for a lot of us out there, this financial dignity does not come about. Tonight we're going to talk about what some of the issues and obstacles are that keep us from reaching this level of financial independence, and what you could do going forward to possibly improve upon your particular situations. Current studies show of people reaching the age of 65, 54% will be reliant upon Social Security as the mainstay of their retirement income, while only 1% is deemed to be wealthy. The Warren Buffetts, the Bill Gates, the Fords, the Kennedys, the Rockefellers, the wealthy. You notice that 4% are what we deem to be financially secure. And it's our role as financial advisors to make sure that our clients hopefully fall within that 4%. You'll also notice that 5% of people reaching the age of 65 and beyond continue to work. Not because they're bored and want to get out of the house and find some stimulation, but because financially they need the additional revenue. They need the income. But the number that strikes us the most alarming, I've been doing these seminars for the better part of 7 years now, the number that strikes us the most concerning is that 36% of us do not reach the age of 65. And our challenge to you and each and every one of our clients is, why are we waiting till age 65? Is it because you're going to be that 54% that's going to get Social Security? Can you put yourself in a better position to possibly retire at 62, 60, 58, maybe even 55? What do you need to have for yourselves financially to be comfortable and secure? A few weeks back, you all received an invitation in the mail inviting us to our program on the retirement seminars. How many of you thought maybe this kind of applied to your situation upon opening? According to our latest figures, if you retire today, you could live very, very comfortable till about 2 p.m. tomorrow. Anybody? A couple people, right? The reason I have this in here simply is a lot of us don't know exactly what it takes to be financially comfortable. There's a big level of insecurity when it comes to planning retirement. So I find this kind of appropriate because a lot of us don't really feel we kind of know what's going on and whether or not we can really afford to make these decisions. We want to take some of that anxiety out of the equation. As Jim mentioned, we're here to educate you and motivate you. You have some comment cards. I'll ask you to reference them a little bit later on. There's slides you have to please follow along. Ask questions. I'll look for participation, obviously. If the questions get a little bit too personal, I'll ask you to hold it to the end. We'll be happy to stay at the end. Okay? So let's start out. What exactly is financial planning all about? Where do I want to go? How am I going to get there? What's the best way and route to make this successful? So I'd like to start with a little story of our personal trip to San Diego. We live up here in New Jersey, Pennsylvania. You get a phone call from a banker in San Diego on Sunday night at 11 p.m. And the banker says, "I'm sorry to disturb you so late. I have some unfortunate news, but I have some good news as well. You have a great Aunt Ethel that recently passed away, and I'm sorry for your loss. However, your great Aunt Ethel has left you the sole heir of a $5 million inheritance." You're kind of stunned. Okay, tell me more. Well, your Aunt Ethel says that you need to be at our bank by Friday at 4 p.m. Now keep in mind it's Sunday at 11 p.m. You now have to be at this bank by Friday at 4. The better part of 5 full days. So okay, that doesn't seem too bad. Just hop on, one of the airlines, right? The banker says, "Well, I'm sorry, but your aunt has some peculiarities about her, and what she wants you to do is drive your own car. You can't fly. You can't take a bus. You can't take a train. You have to drive your own car." Now keep in mind, you need to be here Friday by 4 o'clock. If you are not here by 4 o'clock, we will keep, as the bank, the $5 million. Good luck, and the banker hangs up. You pinch yourself, you elbow your significant other, let's get packing, we got to get moving. You have a deadline. What do you need to take with you to have a successful trip? What do you need?
Credit card.
You need a credit card? What does a credit card represent?
Buying gas, hotels.
Money, monetary. Okay? I need gas, I got food, I got lodging along the way. So I take my credit card.
I make sure I have a good car.
Good car? What's that? I didn't hear what you said.
I said I make sure I have a good car.
Got a good car? Well, whatever's in the garage is what you're going to go with. You're not going to be able to buy a new car Sunday night. But if you think you could wait till Monday,
Rent one.
okay. What else? Need money?
A map.
Need a map, okay? Need a map. Now, why do we need a map? Well, the map hopefully is going to tell us where some of these turns are along the way. Okay, now I want you to think as I go through this, this is our own personal metaphor for retirement. San Diego represents our personal retirement, our success. Okay? Now, it's safe to say, and I'm going to challenge you here, can't we just drive west without a map and just keep going through Ohio and keep going and, you know, whatever else is out there, Indiana, and every town and every city you go to, just keep taking the highways that say west. And eventually, you will reach the Pacific Ocean. You might be in Seattle, but you can get to the West Coast without a map. And you just start driving south, whether it's on, you know, Highway 5 or the Pacific Coast Highway, whatever it is. And if you pass San Diego, the Mexican Border Patrol will gladly turn you around and keep you from going any further. And they'll turn you back and you head back up the road. Okay? So you can make it to San Diego without any map. And clearly, people wind up in retirement without a map. But my challenge here in this story is, unfortunately, it took you 4 days to go west. And it took you 2 days to head south. And you got to the bank Saturday morning at 9 a.m. And the banker's behind the locked door showing you his tickets to Hawaii and the $5 million check that the bank's now going to be able to keep. And he's going on vacation. Okay? You have failed your attempt to reach the bank in time that you were given. Now, what a map is supposed to help you accomplish is getting you there in the least amount of time with the least amount of money possible. Because while you're out there driving, you're wasting gas that extra day, there's extra food that day, there's lodging that extra day. Those are additional expenses. Our challenge is, if your San Diego is a timeline of age 60 or 62, it should be a goal that is non-negotiable, just like the banker is giving you. Non-negotiable. I want to retire at 60, come hell or high water. What do I need to do to get there on my agenda, on my timetable? Do I leave it up to chance? Maybe it costs me more money. Maybe I hit a downturn in the market. Maybe the interest rates aren't where I want them to be. Maybe the boss isn't giving you the bonus or the retirement package you were hoping for. Okay, there's things you can control to help you reach this destination. Okay? One last thought before I move on. How fast do you need to drive this 3,000-mile journey? It's a rhetorical question. How hard does your money need to work? Can you afford to go 65 miles an hour the whole time? Maybe in some places 75, 80, or 90? What if you get stuck and you're only going 50 miles an hour? How do you make up that time? Okay? If your money's not working hard enough, if it's only making 6%, maybe you're not going to get there in time. Conversely, if you're driving too fast and you're being reckless, you could lose that money. You could get pulled over and detained and thrown in jail for speeding. If your investment is not, timing with the market wise and the aggressiveness is too bold, you might be losing money that you can't afford to lose. So how fast do you need to drive? I'm going to carry that thought a little bit further for us. Now, excuse me, like any trip, there are roadblocks. Coming here tonight, we took 95 and 3 lanes down to 2 over by the border, and, traffic kind of slowed up a little bit. Okay? Not too much big of a deal. Had plenty of time. But along the way, there might be roadblocks and obstacles and things that are going to detain you from getting to San Diego. So let's start to address what some of them are and what you can do to counteract them. The first one has to do with inflation. Well, what exactly is inflation? What is inflation doing to us? It's reducing our buying power, okay? If it cost me $1 this year, let's just talk about gasoline. Last year, gas is $1, $1.25. This year, it's $1.50, $1.75. Okay? Not doing anything different. I'm schlepping to work every day. I go to see the kids and the grandkids, and every time I fill the tank, instead of being $20, now it's $30. I'm not doing anything different, am I? But that $30 can only go so far. If I have to put it in my gas tank, I don't have that extra $10 to do something else. Okay? So that's inflation. The same lifestyle is going to continue to go up over time without changing anything. You need to make sure you have the additional assets or revenue to pick up that. Next piece here is taxes. How many people own a home? When's the last time your property taxes went down? Now that's kind of tied to inflation, right? But taxes, if you're going to be a homeowner, taxes are going to be something that's always going to go up. More importantly, we're talking here taxes having to do with the income tax that our clients have to pay on their revenue from pensions and Social Security or their asset base. We find that a lot of our clients' taxes go up in retirement. Now, why do you think that is? What happens at age 70 and a half? Start taking distributions on these retirement plans through your employers, your IRAs, your 401ks. You've been putting all that money in pre-tax. It's been tax deferred. It's been compounding. But at a certain age, whether you need it or not, the government says, you got to start taking it out. So you might already have your pension, you might already have your Social Security, and now all of a sudden you have to take this additional revenue, and now you're increasing your tax bracket. Okay? And it's not coming in at the 15% line, it's probably going to come in at the 28% line, push it to 30%. Okay? You're also losing, at this stage of your life, your tax deductions. The kids are grown, they're out of the house, no more write-offs. I don't suggest having more kids at this stage to get another write-off. Okay? Right? Your house is now getting close, if not already, to be paid off. The tax deduction you had there was your mortgage interest. The only real tax deduction you have at this stage is the money going into those retirement plans through work. You're taking it out on a pre-tax basis in most cases. That's the only thing really left at this point. So you're in your peak earning years, and your tax deductions are disappearing. Okay? And then you slide into retirement, you're pretty much, in a lot of cases, bringing in the same income, but again, there's no real deductions at this point. Okay, people ask us, you know, should I carry a mortgage in retirement? I get the deduction. You know, left pocket, right pocket. I mean, if you have the money, it's paid off. It's money you don't have to lay out. So is it really that important to have a deduction? Probably not. Point is that your taxes are going to still be issues for us. Next one here has to do with human problems. Our trip to San Diego, if I pull over somewhere in Albuquerque at a little Mexican burrito stand and I have myself a couple of enchiladas, and all of a sudden, about an hour later, I'm not feeling so well, I might have to pull over and spend some time in a place I don't want to be, and I can't be driving. I can't be getting to San Diego. I'm going to be detained. Okay? So human problems could be three of the following things. Some form of disability, where I can't work. I said earlier that 36% of us don't reach the age of 65. You have a 7 times greater chance of being disabled before 65 than passing away. 1 out of 7 people will suffer some form of disability before the age of 65. It might only be for a couple weeks, broken ankle, bad back, what have you. But if you're in a long-term disability situation, who's making up for the savings in the retirement plan and the pensions? Okay, who's paying the kids' tuition? Who's paying the mortgage? You have to make sure that we kind of view that, you know, the audience here is kind of at the home stretch for retirement planning. The last thing you can have happen in the next 5 to 10 years is to have some problems that are going to disrupt your cash flow. Okay? That's the disability side. The second piece, I always kind of make fun of this, is a premature death. Tell me, please, what exactly is a mature death? Well, premature death is when you have financial obligations still outstanding. A mortgage. You want to make sure that your spouse and the kids continue to keep the home. So you have that insurance to protect the mortgage so the house is able to maintain its status. I still have kids that need to be funded for college. I make sure that I personally have 3 kids. I make sure that I have money put away every month to save for the college. But God forbid something happened to me or my spouse, we have enough insurance in place that the college gets fully funded so that the pressure's not on the surviving spouse. Again, in your situation, the kids are gone. That's not an issue anymore. Third thing has to do with funding the retirement. If I were to die now and I want my spouse to have a certain lifestyle, I want to make sure the assets are in place. If I don't have the assets, the life insurance helps us do that. Okay? The third human problem has to do with long-term care. We're going to spend a few minutes later on in that regard. Because for most people in this room, that's the bigger area of exposure for us in retirement. That's a big human problem. Okay? We'll get on that later. Last piece of our roadblocks. I'm sorry, we took some calls. We had to move some tables before, the chicken, the salmon, and you know, Maureen didn't get to finish the slide. We were working on it. Maybe we'll do it next week. What does that sound like? Procrastination. Tomorrow's always a better day. Okay? There's always reasons why not to do something. We challenge our clients to just do it. Why aren't you doing this? Do you not want to retire when you want to retire? How important is it? This is not our retirement, folks. This is yours. Okay? There's a lot of people out there that continue to ignore their retirement issues. As it says, I think, in our invitation, more people spend time, or more time, planning for their vacations every year than they do for their retirement. I hope they have some great vacations. The question is, what's their retirement going to look like? You need to spend some time with this. This is something that gets modified over time. It's not something you just put in place today. It's something that is ever-changing and needs to be modified. Okay? Well, we recognize that procrastination's out there for all of us. Believe me, I don't like getting up in the morning sometimes, too. Okay? But you need to do the certain things to make sure you arrive in San Diego when you want. Okay? I hate to tell you, but today's the only day that you can start to make those changes. I can't undo what happened, you know, for you 10, 15 years ago. I can only help you going forward today. Okay? So we hope procrastination's not out there biting too much of us, and we can take more control. Let's talk a little bit about, very big buzzword these days, excuse me, asset allocation. Now, earlier I said to you, how fast do you need to drive? How hard does your money have to work? Well, simply stated, asset allocation to Jim and I is merely an approach of discipline, a disciplined approach to managing clients' assets. Now, what do I mean by a disciplined approach? Well, simply stated, there are 18 different asset classifications. What do I mean by classifications? Cash is an asset classification. A municipal bond is an asset classification. A government bond, a corporate bond, a high-yield bond. A large cap growth stock, large cap value, mid cap, small cap, international, precious metals, commodities, futures, real estate. Those are different places and opportunities to invest. Some have less risk than others, some generate income, some do not. How do all these pieces mix and match for us to invest in? How do we choose? Why do we want to be in certain areas? Why do we want to avoid other areas? How much volatility do you want in your portfolio? Do you like to eat better, or do you like to sleep better? Okay? Because all that comes down to the big word called risk. How much risk do you want to take? Now, part of the planning process helps us determine what rate of return or how fast you need to drive. You want to get there in the next 3 years, this is the kind of rate of return you need to make. Whether you agree with it or not, that's what the numbers are showing. The question now is, are you comfortable with that number? Let's just say it's 7%. So what I'm saying here is that we'll calculate with our clients that at 7% rate of return, they will have a very comfortable and affordable retirement. All they now need to do for the next 25, 30 years is make 7% consistently. Not have 35 and then lose 40, but make somewhere consistent to 7%. The challenge now is to understand how asset allocation as a discipline works for us. 91% of your success will come from where you divide your assets over these 18 different categories. How much cash, how much stock, how much bonds. What kind of bonds, what kind of stocks? What percentage, what slice of your pie belongs in each one of these areas? While only 6% of your performance or success is influenced by who is actually managing the money. I don't mean managing it like Jim and I. I'm talking about Fidelity and Dreyfus and T. Rowe Price and Oppenheimer and Putnam, and you know the names. Okay? There are over 8,000 different mutual funds out there. Our challenge is to ask yourself first, where is this particular mutual fund putting my money? People know Fidelity Magellan, right? It's a very popular name. Yes? No? Hello? Okay? Magellan has had successful track records for the better part of over 20 years. We see it in a lot of 401k plans, and obviously clients continue to put their dollars into it. Now, I have nothing negative to say about Fidelity Magellan. My challenge to you is ask yourself, do you know where Magellan puts your money? Because you're entrusting them to make the daily decisions to manage that pile of money for you. If they're buying pork bellies, and you don't want to be in pork bellies, you have to ask yourself, why am I giving these people that money? Okay? They happen to be investing in a certain area of the market. The question is really, how much exposure should you have in that area? People send us their 401k stuff when we meet with them, and they have, unfortunately, limited choices in a lot of 401k plans. And the first thing they always do is look at the performance to see where they should be buying. And we got to stop them and say, the performance is here. You're buying the who. You're buying somebody's track record. You're buying somebody's good year. In this case, a lot of last year or two has been the last bad years. Okay, we're seeing now, I got clients coming in, and they're showing us, I was looking to sign up for these, and they're showing me the pluses for the last year or two. And they don't want to go anywhere near all the negatives. And the negatives were the ones that were rocking and rolling 3-4 years ago, right? They don't want those. They don't want the ones that are going up. And these are the same people that 4 or 5 years ago wanted all the ones that were rocking and rolling and going up. Okay? They're chasing performance. We promise you that we will never, ever buy you the #1 ranked mutual fund managers. Every year, January, Money Magazine and Fortune, and, they publish these magazine articles telling you who the best managers were, the top performers for the year 2001. Somebody always has to be at the top, right? The problem is if you buy #1, what happens the next year? They're never back at the top. They might have had a good roll, the market might have changed, but I can assure you if you go back and check, this year's #1 is never ever next year's #1. And I've had disputes with clients who want to buy #1. We don't want #1s. We want to focus on the top 10 to 20 percentile of managers with good track records, good market performance. Let me ask you something, the last 2 years, what's been more important, performance or not losing money? Not losing money. Well, there are managers out there that did fairly well the last few years during the robustness, but they didn't get their clocks clean the last 2 years. And maybe they didn't do that great for the 4 or 5 years of the good years. They were in the game, but they weren't up there. They didn't take the same risks. At the same time, they didn't give it all back. We're finding out now the hard way, not giving it back is more important than making it more. And that goes back to the risk. If I don't need to be making 45%, why am I buying Yahoo at 300 and watching it sink and not knowing when to get out? I'm going to come back to the discipline about getting out in a moment. Not to offend anybody who has Yahoo. Only 2% of your influence is based upon when you make your investment decisions. You can't time the market. Got a client call the other day, had had enough of her tech fund, wanted out. Tech market was almost at the absolute low. What did the tech market do yesterday? Up 7%. She sold the day before. She'd had enough. She threw in the towel. I'm not saying she's timing the market, but it certainly wasn't the best time to be selling. Conversely is, when's the best time to be buying? That's what's more important. Do we buy over time? Do we wait till the market goes up? How many people have ever heard of the store called Macy's? Do we tend to go to Macy's on Super Wednesday and Fabulous Tuesday when they have these great sales? No, you don't go. That's good. They try and attract us into the stores when they have these great mega sales. Right? 30% off. Use your card, another 10%. Take another 40% off. The stuff's free. Come on in. Okay? They're dying to get you in the store so they can move out their inventory, right? Bring in the spring stuff, bring in the summer stuff. Okay? Well, when the market's going down, why don't we view the same thing as an opportunity? Do we wait for Macy's sale to be over and go, this was a great sweater, and I'll come back next week when it's 120% of the original price, because I don't want to buy it when it's 50% off now. I'll wait till it goes up, and then it's at 120%. Well, we tend to view our investments the same way. I don't want something that used to be $1 when it's now 50 cents, but when it's back to $1.25, I'm all for it. And we tend to overpay. Okay? Our discipline with asset allocation is actually buying low and selling high. And here's how that goes. I'll keep this simple, to two different pieces of your pie. Whatever categories you want. Some kind of stock, maybe a bond. Okay? Or even better, growth versus value. That's been a good one the last couple of years. Technology, all the big bubble that you hear about that was burst kind of came on the growth side. And the value stocks, the old, school names or the pharmaceuticals, or there was nothing sexy about them. They were old hat. Well, during 97, 98, 99, the value stocks weren't exactly the sexiest performers. The numbers weren't there. But what was? Growth. Up 40%, up 20%, up 30%. And every year they just kept going higher and higher, and we all got caught up in the greed to make that money. Jim will tell you he's got a client, 80-year-old late grandmother, calling him up to buy Cisco at $85 a share. And he's like, you don't need to be in that. No, everybody's telling me I should be buying Cisco. Like, ma'am, you're 80. You don't need to be buying Cisco. I got a great CD. No, I don't want a CD. Okay? Everybody wanted in on the euphoria. It became easy money. The problem is that growth kept going up and up and up and up. And the returns were fabulous. Until, well, loosen, there you go. Until the ball turned the other way. And now all of a sudden that snowball that had built up here started rolling downhill. And it gained momentum, and the selling, and the prices kept dropping. Lucent was what, in the 80s, and now it's, $4 or $5. And we could name, dozens of companies just like it. Okay? The problem is you had no exit strategy. You didn't know when to get out. You had no discipline. Well, our discipline goes something like this. If I have half my money in each of these two buckets, we determine when you do your asset allocation, to minimize your risk exposure, you have these 8, 10 different areas all mixed in your pie chart. I'm just using 2 as an example. Half are in one bucket, half is in the other bucket. That is going to be the maximum risk for you. It's all you need to be doing to make 7%. Is everybody with me on that? So all you got to do is do 50-50. Again, this is just an example. Now, as the market goes up on the growth side, 40%, this is now 70. Let's just say this stayed constant. So now you're at 70-30 because half your money went up 40% and your other half just kind of stayed the same, maybe went down a little bit. Okay? So now you look at your year-end results and you go, wow, I kicked it over here, I made 40%. This guy didn't do anything. I'm going to get rid of this and I'm going to buy some more of this. That could have been international, it could have been your bonds, it could have been anything. Anything that disappointed you, in most cases, wind up getting shifted into the hot areas. And you did it based upon, in most cases, that year-end performance number. Okay? And sure, it happened to work out. This went up another, let's say, 30%. And so on and so forth. What we would have done instead in our annual review or semi-annual review, depending on what we do, most clients will rebalance at least twice a year, no less than once a year, some people 4 times a year. Depends on their risk tolerance. We're going to tell you, look, your throttle is running at 85 miles an hour right now. You got to cool back on the speed. This is representing too much risk. We need you to get rid of the 20% over here and bring it back down to 50, and add that 20 over here and bring this up to 50. Now, did I get you out of growth? No. Did I take some money off the table? Yeah. Did I now buy an area that had gone down? What's the first rule of investing successfully? Buying low and selling high. But yet, we have this emotional attachment to our assets that sometimes keeps us from doing it. Asset allocation has no emotions. It's a discipline. It's logical, and that's what we follow. I don't get hung up on, and I'm not married to, the investments we buy. They're there to do a job for us. If they don't, we'll replace it. Okay? If there's a reason why every other growth manager is going up and yours isn't, and there's problems, then we'll change it. But if everybody's going up, and that's what we're expecting, then at some point we'll start to sell off to rebalance the portfolio. Now the next year goes by and it went up 30%, so now it's 65-35. And again, I do the same thing. I cross off the 15 and I add it back. Everybody following me? I'm always going to bring it back to 50-50. As often as possible, that's where I want to be. Now what happened 3 years later in this scenario? this finally had a bad time. Everybody know what the dogs of the Dow theory is? Everybody hear of dogs of the Dow? Theory of the dogs of the Dow says buy the worst performers for last year because odds are they won't do as bad next year. This is basically the similar type of concept. We want to support the lower performing assets in our portfolios and continue to buy low over time. And then guess what? They start to kick in. Because as this side of the market fell, the value stocks took off. J&J was up 50%. That's a value stock. Philip Morris was down at $20 when the growth stocks were going crazy. Philip Morris is sitting at not all-time highs, but $56 a share right now, 2 years later. Well, why do you think that is? Because nobody wanted it at 20, but all of a sudden everybody wants it at 40, and now it's going up into the 50s and higher. Okay? The value stocks took off. Now guess what? At some point, the value stocks will start to pull back. Now, have we not seen the pharmaceuticals start to drop the last couple of months? Have we now seen bond prices change? What was safe money 2 years ago, a year ago, is all of a sudden now starting to become shaky. My point simply, I'm sorry I'm belaboring this, is the markets rotate. Okay? There's a reason why you're buying 6 or 7 different areas. I don't know what's going to be this year's good winner, but you're going to have your toe in each one of the different places. And when it kicks off and makes money for you, we'll tone it down. We'll look at which one's down at the bottom, and we'll throw some money into the ones at the bottom. Because the ones at the bottom eventually will come up to the top, and that's where you're going to make your performance. Okay? I don't know if we still have that handout or not, but there's a color-coded chart of the last 20 years of the market, and it's color-coded by the different asset classes. And the only reason I reference it, and we'll show it to you if you come to the office, is you can see the blue is at the top, and all of a sudden the blue moves to the bottom. And the red was at the bottom, and the red's moving to the top. And they just keep doing those types of things. I can promise you this. If you have a properly diversified portfolio, you will always have something annoying you out of those 6, 7, 8 different positions. If something in your portfolio is not going down, then you're actually not diversified properly. Something needs to be going down because that's what you're going to be adding to. Not running away from it, being annoyed and ticked off that it's been going down while everything else was going up. Okay? This is our disciplined approach. Take the emotions out of the game. Any questions on asset allocation? Okay. Am I making sense? Anything you want to add? No? Okay, good. All right. Let's tie these two pieces together. In my opinion, this is the most important slide of tonight's presentation. Each and every one of you has an X factor. And if you don't know what your X factor is, I guarantee you, you will not have a successful retirement. If you remember nothing about tonight, yeah, the chicken was okay, the fish was a little cold, the soup, well, you didn't have soup, salad was all right, okay? I want you to remember one letter walking out of here. If our paths never meet again, please remember this letter X. We all have it. Let's talk about it. This is our timeline. Whether you're 50, 40, 30, 70 years of age, we got a timeline. Over time, we have a need for money. That's our consumption. That's our survival. Those are our wants and needs. We want money. We work to make money. When I stop working, I still need money. I still want to have money. I like what money does for me. Right? That's what we're here for. The question is, where does this money come from once the paycheck stops? Your turn. Where does it come from? Where do you get money when you retire? Exactly. Social Security, pensions, nest egg. You're all saying it. IRAs, 401ks, CDs, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, cash in the mattress. A nest egg. Let's label it a nest egg. Not all of us get pensions. Hopefully all of us will get Social Security. These are the 3 places that you have as resources. I retire, and my expenses are to be comfortable and have a nice existence. What I've planned for is I'd like to have $5,000 every month to enjoy my retirement years. The question now is, out of the $5,000, it has to come from these 3 areas. My pension is, say $1,000. Social Security is another $1,000. How much am I short? I am short $3,000. Where's it going to come from? It's going to come from my nest egg. That, ladies and gentlemen, is your X factor. X simply represents the amount of money you need off of your nest egg to supplement the Social Security and the pension. Is X a moving number or a constant number? Moving. Why? Because of inflation. Because of taxation. So X is ever changing. So well, you may think you know your X today. Do you know what your X is in 5 years and in 10 years? What have you done to prepare to make sure your X is large enough? That is why X is so important to us. Now, a lot of people get fooled, if you will, when they retire because the pension and the Social Security might be over $5,000, which is terrific. They have an abundance, or in this case, a profit. If I'm bringing in $7,000 and my expenses are $5,000, I'm still accumulating money. My asset base is probably still growing because my nest egg's not being touched and I'm bringing in more money. That leads us to more issues around estate planning. Because if you're not going through your money is continuing to accumulate, what do you do then if you don't actually spend it? Conversely, if my expenses start to increase now, let's say my expenses stay at $7,000, and now all of a sudden I'm out here and it's $9,000 because of inflation, because of lifestyle changes. What happens now? I'm not generating enough off of my X factor anymore. Where do I get the extra money now? What'd you say? Put your wife back to work. Like sleeping on the couch. Instead of rolling over the CD, you're going to cash it out to pay your property taxes, to make the Winnebago payment, to take the grandkids to Disney. Okay? You will start to now take bites out of your nest egg to meet the additional needs. Now, what has now happened? You start to spend your principal. And the more you spend, the less there'll be next year, and so on and so forth. And the unraveling, that was a hard one. The unraveling process has now begun. Okay? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is now this point in time. The second most important piece of this slide is knowing when your lines cross. Because your lines cross now means that you're running a deficit in your retirement cash flow and have to spend principal. Everybody with me on that? So you need to know your X factor, and you need to know when your lines cross. Now, if I told you at age 85, for the first time, your lines crossed, would you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? How many people think it's a good thing? I got one, I got two, I got three. Who else? Anybody else think it's a good thing? Too old to care. How many people think it's a bad thing? I got a couple bads. How come it's bad?
That depends on how much you want to leave, assuming that you want to leave an estate.
Okay, it depends on how much I want to leave, he says. If I want to leave an estate.
You want to spend your last dollar to pay.
Okay, very good. Sir?
I agree with him.
He agrees with him. All right, let's go back. Who said it was good? Why is it good?
Be happy to live to 85.
He's happy he lived to 85. Okay, I can go with that one. What am I asking you? What am I challenging you to think about? I'm 85 years of age. I retired at 60. I had whatever dollar amount you want to say you had in your nest egg. $1, $5, $5 million, doesn't matter. You had a nest egg. You have never touched the principal of this nest egg. You've always lived off of the cash flow, the income. And now you're 85. And you've never touched that asset base. What are you waiting for? Could you not have enjoyed your money a little bit earlier? Perhaps maybe you could have retired 5 years earlier because you didn't want to leave this large sum of money to somebody else. Because if you don't spend your money, odds are, statistically, at age 85, you're near the end of the road, right? So if you haven't spent it at this point, your fruitful days of doing so are pretty much behind you. You're not going to Tahiti and, world cruises at age 85. I hope maybe you are. I know you're about 40 years away from it, but I hope you are. Okay? But our challenge is to get out there, retire at 55 to 60, and spend the money while you're able to. And then when you start slowing down, economically, you'll be spending less money anyway, because you do start to slow down in your later years. But again, why is this important to know when this event occurs? Because maybe you could retire a little bit earlier. Maybe you could afford to raise your spending lifestyle up. Maybe that means you could take on a second home in Florida or wherever you'd like to snowbird or do whatever. Maybe you always wanted to buy that town car, that Lincoln or Lincoln town car, Cadillac, Lexus, whatever. And maybe you've been denying yourself that boat and that country club membership because you just kind of felt you needed the money. But you didn't quite know why you needed the money. Okay? We don't want a guessing game. The purpose of the planning is to open up the doors to see where the opportunities are to unleash the power of these dollars to give you that financial dignity, to get you out of the employment race and into the retirement race. Okay? Now, if I told you, what do I want to say? Oh. If your line's crossed at age 67, that's where you might start to think you would have some problems. Because if the expenditures here all of a sudden took a spike up and the money's unraveling a lot faster, this is where the discomfort starts to come in from. What happens at age 85, 80s, 90s if we live that long? What's our biggest fear as we get older? Our health. Okay? And if our health takes dramatic changes and our lines spike up like this because of unforeseen expenses, this is why I kind of call this the rainy day. You're all comfortable at age 85, having all this money. For the most part, everybody kind of said the same thing. Good or bad, you all kind of felt the same way. Is, you know, if I live this long, I don't care. If I live this long, you know, the money's still there. Okay? But the point is that as you get older, the parts start to go, and the replacement expense is pretty high to get new parts. Okay? Now, if this is a rainy day that we're afraid is going to come for us, what can we do, if anything, to take the rainy day out of the equation? And that's our next challenge here, because we feel if you can remove this burden from you, it unleashes your assets to do the things that you hope to do with them. Okay? So what am I talking about here? Well, let's tie it in with another quick story. You have 4 banks in town. They have the following deposits. Your friend calls you up Sunday night and informs you that one of these banks is being taken over by the Federal Reserve. They're in town. They're going to be opening up at 10 a.m. Monday. The management has been so poorly handling the bank, they didn't pay their FDIC insurance, and all the deposits are at risk. That's not a good phone call. If you don't get to the bank by Monday morning, matter of fact, you may need to go right now and get in line to try and get at least some of your money back. And they hang up the phone and you tell your spouse, get me those passbooks, and you see that these are those values in those 4 bank accounts. Which one are you going to first? Where are you going to spend the night? $200,000, right? It's a lot of money. Are you worried about $500? Not over $200,000, I'm not. Okay? Now, you get off the phone, you get on the internet, and you find out that they publish some statistics or odds of these banks going out of business. And you take that information, and it looks like this. 1 out of 250, 1 out of 500, 1 out of 1,200, and 1 out of 2. Now which bank are you going to? 90,000? Anybody not going to 90,000? You're not going to 90,000? How come?
I like my 200,000 more.
You like it? Even though it's 1 out of 1,200 versus 50-50 shot. Okay, you're entitled. Well, let's discuss what each of these represent in our existing lives right now. $200,000 is about the national average of what our homes are worth. In this area, obviously a little bit more than that, but nationally about $200,000. The odds of your house burning down are 1 out of 1,200. Ask your fire captain the next time you're down at the firehouse. 1 out of 1,200 houses burn down. Would I ever think about not protecting my house? How many people don't have fire insurance? Okay. But your house is paid for. You don't have a mortgage. The mortgage company doesn't force you to pay for that anymore, right? I have to pay for it because I have a mortgage. But if I don't have a mortgage, nobody's got a gun to your head to pay for it. But yet we do because why? Simply, it's too much money for me to chance losing. Okay? $500 represents your automobile deduction. Every day, 1 out of 250 people have a little fender bender. We pay the out-of-pocket $500. It's not breaking the bank, is it? We're not happy about it, but it's not going to break us. $20,000 represents totaling that automobile. Average car maybe is $20,000, $30,000. 1 out of 500 people total their car. I wouldn't leave the showroom unless I called my car agent to make sure I've got the proper collision on this brand new car, right? Because if I get wiped out, I don't want to have to cough up another 20 grand to buy a new car, right? We make sure we have that collision. Well, remember that 64% that make it to age 65? We said 36 don't, 64 do. Those who reach the age of 65, 1 out of 2 will require some form of long-term care needs. This is why we like to have all our money available at age 85. This is why it's okay, we all said it's a good thing, to have the assets available to us. Because statistically speaking, 1 out of 2 of us might need it. The average cost in this area is between $60,000 and $90,000 a year in today's dollars. Nursing home inflation runs the better part of 5%. That means in 14 years, add that onto your age now, it's going to be twice that. That's $1.80 a year. How much money do you need to have put aside to cover 1 year in future dollars in 14 years? It's $180,000. Are your assets able to keep pace with that? That's a big exposure. That's just one of you. What happens if the second one needs it? Okay? So we're going to spend a couple minutes talking about what's available to us. Again, we talked about that rainy day. You want to take away or give you that, that little umbrella to protect you from the rainy day. Okay? Now, when I say long-term care, I'm not necessarily talking about nursing home because nursing home has become somewhat of a dirty word. But there's home care, there's assisted living. Very popular right now. What's going on being built all over the place? Marriott's building them left and right, assisted living facilities. Sell your house, buy in here, pay us a monthly fee, and we'll take care of you, we'll feed you, we've got staff in case you need it. Okay? That's becoming the growing trend because of the baby boomer generation. They don't want nursing homes, and I don't want you in a nursing home. But if I have a need for long-term care, I need to know point blank, who's paying? Because if I have the assets, I got to use them first. If I don't have the money, we'll get to that in a moment. What we're talking about here simply is about quality of care. Am I doing it right? I'm doing it wrong. Quality of care. I'm close. Quality. Quality of care. Quality of choice. Before I start with these two pieces, in 1997, do you know you were all given a tax deduction back? Or at least not necessarily back, but given a new tax deduction. Anybody know what that was? A bill was passed by Congress and the House of Representatives that gave each and every one of us a potential tax deduction. And that tax deduction came on premiums paid for long-term care insurance. If you go out and you buy your own long-term care insurance, it is eligible as a tax deduction. Did you know that? Some people, yes. Now, my question to you, because some people always scoff at it and say, well, I'll never get the tax deduction. You know what? You may not. And I don't care whether you do or you don't. That's not why we're encouraging people to do something about this. The reason we raise it tonight is because social policy has dictated this situation needs to be addressed. There's a reason why our governmental officials out there have asked us to do something about it, because the baby boomer generation is going to break the Medicaid and Medicare system if they all rely upon Social Security to pay for these needs. We can't afford as a society to pay $90,000 a year for everybody. So we're asking, social policy has now dictated please address this yourself. We don't care if you buy insurance or not, but put the dollars aside, do something. Don't ignore the problem. Okay? There's 3 types of basic needs when it comes to long-term care. You got your skilled care, which really requires the nursing home itself. You have your intermediate care, which maybe is home, maybe is a nursing home, nurses, things like that. But the biggest and most growing one is what we call custodial care. You don't need a nursing home, you just need somebody around the house. You don't want to break up the couples that are together. Nobody wants to see their spouse go into a nursing home. You want to stay home as long as possible. Custodial care is the largest growing, fastest growing thing. That, in other words, is what assisted living has become. It's for custodial care. You just need somebody to help around the house, cook, clean, do whatever. Okay? So the question is not to throw in the towel and move into some nursing home and give up everything, but to stay in your home and continue to enjoy your lifestyle that you've grown accustomed to. Again, it comes back to who pays. Where does the money come from? Because if it's $180,000 in 14 years, folks, that's going to put a dent in your nest egg. Let's talk about Medicare and Medicaid. What's available to us if we happen to fall in those categories? I retire at 62. I'm shoveling the snow, I fall down, I break my hip. My wife takes me to the hospital, they replace my hip, I'm there for 3 days and 3 nights, and they send me to a rehabilitation place. All right? The next 20 days, how much does Medicare pay? Who said that?
0.
0. How come?
You're under 65.
Not 65. All right, it's a trick question. I threw you a curve. We got people who picked it up. At 62, I'm collecting Social Security. I've retired. You're telling me I don't get Medicare even though I'm on Social Security? That's right. It's age 65, 66, 67, depending on what your birth year is. I threw you a curveball. Just because you're getting Social Security doesn't mean you get Medicare. All right? Smart group. Age 65, whatever. Now, what do they pay? For the next 20 days, what is Medicare going to pay if I go through a hospital? What's that?
I don't know if they pay anything first.
They pay the whole thing. They pay the whole thing. Now think about it for a second. I'm in the hospital bed's $400 or $500 a day. Does Medicare want to pay that? No. Put me in a nursing home, give me some rehabilitation, maybe it's a couple $100s a day. It's better than being in the hospital. It's cheap. Okay? So they'll pick up the first 3 weeks, basically. All right? From day 21, for the next 80 days, what happens now? You pay, the numbers have slowly risen, it was 95, 97, now it's 101.50. That's your copayment. You pay the first $100. Everything above 101.50, they'll take care of it. So if the place is $200 a day, they're paying the $98. Okay? Am I afraid for you of having to pay the better part of $8,000? Not really. Again, most of us would be secure enough financially, $8 grand's not going to change our lifestyle. Again, not pleasant, but at least we can come up with it. What happens after day 101? You're on your own. Thank you. They're done. So Social Security, Medicare itself, really is only for about the better part of 3.5 months. That's a short-term need. What's the average nursing home stay? 2 to 3 years. Better part of 3 years. Now, of course, that's an average stay. Who's in for 30 days or, I'm sorry, not 30 days, 90 days or 120 days, 3 to 6 months? Terminally ill, hospices, okay? So that number, that 3-year number, is obviously skewed because if somebody goes into a hospice situation because they're terminally ill, they really need the care at this point, there's no real recovery, you know, that exposure is going to be taken care of for the most part. How about Alzheimer's? Any idea what the average Alzheimer's length is? 8 to 12 years. So that 2 to 3 year number, again, is skewed. Am I concerned about the first 100 days? No. Am I concerned if it's something long-term? Absolutely. You're talking about $180,000, $200,000 a day, 10, 15 years from now. Okay? That's what I'm concerned about. What about Medicaid? What's available there? What is Medicaid? Somebody always says the word. What's Medicaid? Welfare. You got to be broke to get Medicaid. You have to have basically no money left. Goes something like this. We got mom and pop. They got $250,000. They own a home. Pension, Social Security coming in from pop. Pop needs a nursing home. They go through the Medicare. They're done with Medicare. They now go to Medicaid. $250,000 in the bank. Investable assets. What does Medicaid tell them to do? Use it up. Till how much? $80,000. They got to spend $170,000 before Medicaid kicks in. Okay? So Pop's in a nursing home. Mom sits there. She's now down to $80,000. Can they force her to sell the house? No. What happens to Pop's pension check? They could take it. How about Social Security? They could take it. So here's Mom entrusting Pop all these years to work, be the breadwinner. She raised a family, thought her retirement was secure, and all of a sudden, son of a gun, spending all the money, and they're taking all the cash flow. So Mom calls you up and says, you know what, Susie? I don't need the big house anymore. Why don't I move in with you and Harry and the kids? And she puts the house up for sale. That $300,000 house moves up to the top, does it not? So make sure that doesn't happen if you have an applicable situation. She wants to move in with you. She doesn't want to be alone anymore. Rent the house. Bring in the cash flow. Do something. Don't sell it. Okay? So there's your first caution. Now, down the road, Pop passes away. Years go by. Now Mom needs the same type of care. She's got the house. She's got $80,000. She's got the residue of these two incomes. She goes to a nursing home. They ask for Medicaid. What does Medicaid now tell her to do with the $80,000? Use it. Spend it down to $2,000. Burial. Can they force her to sell the house? No. How long do you expect her to be in that nursing home, and what happens if she gets out? Okay. Again, certain situations. My point is that they can't necessarily force you to sell the house. They can attach the house so that your kids don't get the money from it. But what if the lady comes out? You can't take her home away. Okay? So they can't necessarily force you to sell the house, but they are attaching it. Okay? Alzheimer's person, hey, they're never coming home. Okay? That's obviously a little bit different. It depends on the situation, but the point is that they really can't force you. But what I want you to be more aware of is the kids aren't going to get the money. That's what's more important. Same with the pension and Social Security. What kind of care do you think you're getting when you're on Medicaid? Minimal. You got 6 people in a room. Who knows? If you don't like it, who's going to care? Who's going to make the changes? You're part of the program. You're going to get what the program gives. If I'm writing the checks, I can dictate exactly where I want to go. That's why I'm back to quality of care. If I cash in my policy for long-term care, and it's now generating for me that $150 a day or whatever it is, I write the checks. I decide where I want to go. If I want to be in the Bahamas in some resort at $1,000 a day, getting my face fanned, eating grapes, and that's a nursing home, hey, if I got the money, why not? That's what you're entitled to. The question is, these two programs aren't exactly the most beneficial. Okay? Are there any questions on this? My tie-in back, simply to go back to the X factor, folks, is that if you know these expenses are out there, that's what's going to jack up and mess up your retirement game plan. You want to have those assets put aside in case. Our challenge is, if you have the coverage out there from a third party, you can spend your assets down comfortably without having to worry about coming up with $250,000 every year. Okay? Which gives you the financial freedom to open up your wallet, to retire earlier, and do the things you hope to want to do. Okay? How are we doing on time? Good? Okay. About 15 more minutes or so? One other area of influence that you have on your X factor circumvents around pension decisions. You can't really control Social Security unless you want to keep working more and pump it into the system and defer it till age 70. So I don't necessarily recommend that just to get more out of Social Security. Okay? You can influence your nest egg by saving more, spending less, increasing your rate of returns. You have influence there. Unbeknownst to some of us, you have decisions in your pension that could bring in additional revenues. Let's go through that. We got John and Mary. John's 60 years of age and he's ready to retire. John goes down to Human Resources, says, I'm ready to go, what do you got? They say, well, John, you've been with us for the better part of 30 years. We've been putting aside money every year for you in this pension system, and you're entitled to a benefit of $5,000 a month for the rest of your life. John says, wow, that's not too bad, $60,000 a year, that's pretty lucrative. John goes home to Mary and says, Mary, check this out, $5,000. Mary happens to look over here and sees what she's going to get when John dies. And Mary has to sign off on this. It has to be notarized. So Mary can't get the proverbial shaft out of this money because if John, this happened during the wartime in World War II. A lot of the GIs went overseas, they had their GI pension, but they didn't elect a survivor benefit and they got killed in the war and the spouses, the widows, never got the proceeds. So now it's mandated, the spouse has to be aware of the decision, agree to it, and sign off on it. That's protecting us. So Mary says, you're out of your mind, I'm not accepting this, go back and get me something else. And John goes back the next day, and they discuss option B. And option B says, you give us 10%. Okay, I'm taking 500 out of here as 10%, I get to 4,500. Everybody with me? And if John dies first, she'll get the survivor benefit of $2,200, which is half, $2,250. Okay? John goes home to Mary, shows it to Mary. Mary pulls out the financial plan. She says, look at my X factor. I can't afford $2,200 with Social Security. There's not enough assets in place, blah, blah, blah. I needed more money than that. This is unacceptable. John goes back again to Human Resources. They discuss option C. Option C says you give us 20%, $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. This is starting to become real money. But in doing so, the $12,000 gives Mary the same survivor benefit as if they were both together. It's 100% survivor benefit. So Mary looks at the numbers now and says, I get $4,000 with them, and I get $4,000 without them. John's checking his food from now on. 85% of us select option C. Why? Because it's the largest amount of money. Okay? We want to make sure our spouse is protected, but there's a sacrifice in this regard of $12,000 a year to do so. Okay? And that is money, in most cases, lost and never to be seen again. Now our challenge to you, as you see here, is we're going to compare the company plan to possibly doing it privately. Now what exactly do we mean by doing it privately? Well, let's start out first fundamentally, is that pensions are derived upon annuity and insurance or life insurance calculations. We have to determine how much money in a lump sum is available to Mary to generate $4,000. And in essence, that's what the company's doing with your $12,000. Everybody with me on that? Okay? So they're going out, taking your $12,000, and they're providing some benefit that's going to generate $4,000. Our challenge is for each and every one of us, before we sign off on the company plan, can we do this privately, more efficiently, take better control of these decisions, and possibly put more money in our pockets? Because what I want my client to do is consider taking option A versus the company plan of option C. Take the $12,000, buy your own policy, and I'll explain how it works in a second. Now, just to share with you, in a lot of cases, depending on your age and your health, you could get the insurance for a lot less than $12,000. I'm working with a client right now who'll be back next week. His policy just came in. His give-up was $14,000 through his employer. Privately, the insurance cost $10,000. That's a $4,000 savings right off the bat. For the rest of his life, that's an extra $4,000. Okay? Now, I'm not promising that to everybody. Some people aren't insured. Okay? But the point is, let's investigate it before you make the final decisions. That's what we're challenging. So it goes like this. Let's start with the company plan. We take option C. First box here says husband dies first. So he's retired. He collects his $4,000. He dies. John dies. How much does Mary get? $4,000. That's what it's there for. Okay? That's why they did the company plan. Now it gets a little interesting. 15 years down the road, Mary dies. She has the nerve to die first. This man gave up, they gave up $12,000 for 15 years is $180,000 of pension cash flow to protect her. And she had the nerve to die before John. What happens to John? How much is he receiving? $4,000. Does he go back to 5?
Nope.
All right, I'm going to stop you for a second because we did get called out. If you work for AT&T, they have a pop-up provision. We now saw a client last week, works for the state. You can now elect a pop-up provision. It costs you a little bit of money, but it's available. So they're starting to tinker with the pop-up provisions. But in most cases, over 95%, he's stuck at $4,000 for the rest of his life. So I put that as a big negative. Okay, there's one negative because he's stuck at $4,000 instead of $5,000. And the company's still getting $1,000. Let's go back 1 second. Is the company going to send him a check for $180,000 and refund him all the money he's given up? No. The money is being kept by the company. There's a reason why companies like AT&T have self-funded pensions. Because we don't all make it out to the mortality tables. And they get to keep the money. If Mary died first, they collected all his money and never had to pay out Mary. God bless. Okay? So you got two negatives right there if, under these circumstances, Mary died first. So I'm not too happy with that, especially if I'm John. Third piece. John retires on Friday, picks up the new Winnebago on Saturday. Mary's got the map, all the brochures. They're going to the Grand Canyon. Mary says make a left. God bless you. John turns right. Down the Grand Canyon they go. Never to be seen from again. Tires wash up in Utah. The first pension check is sitting in the mailbox Monday morning uncashed. What happens to the money? Back to the company. Nothing is sent. The check stopped. Now, hold on. You're telling me that this guy was supposed to live for about 25 years, get 60 grand is $1.5 million, and the company's not going to send the kids a penny? That's right, not a penny. Now you know why companies like AT&T have self-funded pensions, because spouses do die sometimes close together. One gets sick, the other dies heartbroken. It happens, you've heard about it. Maybe there's an accident. But the point is that statistically it does happen. And nobody gets a penny. It goes back into the company pocket. Now to me this is more tragic. Let's go back to now why we want to look at the private and how you can gain some control here over these dollars. Same decisions, different mousetrap. You're getting on a different wheel. We're doing it a little bit different. Why do the status quo of the company when maybe you could do more control here? We go out, we take option A. We calculate how much insurance is needed. We put the policy in force, make sure he's insurable before he retires. We send the proceeds to pay for, out of the pension dollars, we send in to pay for the insurance. Now John dies. So what was happening? He was getting 5. In theory, let's just say he was sending 1. Maybe it's less, maybe it's more. I don't know. Depends on his age, depends on his health. Let's just say it's the same number. So he's netting $4,000, which is what he would have gotten from the company. Now he dies. What happens to the pension check? Stops. But what does Mary have? She has a policy. She calls Jim and I. We cash in the policy. We generate the $4,000 a month for her. Is Mary any worse off? No, she is not. That is what it was done for. Okay? We gave her the $4,000 that she was supposed to get from the company. Okay? So that washes itself. Again, John going in either case, no big deal. Now, tragically, Mary goes first. What happens here? How much is John receiving? How much is John receiving? 5. Does he need to pay the premium for the insurance now? No. He's given himself his own pop-up. So he doesn't pay the premiums anymore, or minus 0, I guess. And he's back to $5,000 himself. Now, he could keep the policy if he wants to give it to the kids or the grandkids. That's a different part of the story. But if he doesn't need it, it was for Mary, there are no children, he doesn't need it, he cashes it out. And he lives the rest of his life back at $5,000. That's a plus to me. So there's your first plus. I'll put it over there. Now, earlier we said, does the company send a check for $180,000? No. What's happening over here with our little policy? I'm sending in that $12,000 a year. Part of it goes, that says COI, cost of insurance. There's a cost to run that policy. At the same time, what is the policy doing on the other side?
Earning.
Earning, okay? It's building cash value, and the cash value is earning. There's money in there. Whose money is it? It's John's. Okay? Now, when we project out, we'll calculate the numbers. You need 4,000 based on your age. We'll tell you how much insurance you need. We'll run the illustrations. We'll tell you what the premiums are. And in the illustrations, it'll show you approximately how much money is being accumulated. What happens to that money now if you don't need the policy? You just built in your own refund. So you bumped yourself up and you got yourself a refund. Folks, if there's $1 in there, is it better than the company plan? Okay? You built in your own refund. You're stacking the odds back in your favor. You got 2 pluses here versus 2 negatives. You're in better control. You've increased your lifestyle by 25%, going from $4,000 to $5,000. And you have some money to do something with. What happens in the Winnebago story? Let's again go through it. He's getting 5. He dies. Nothing for Mary. Mary's gone, John's gone. Kids go through the personal affairs. They open up the vault, the safe deposit box. They find the will. They find an insurance policy. It says, if I, John, die, leave this money to my wife, Mary. Mary's gone. Ooh, what does it say underneath there? Contingent beneficiary. Those are your kids. Your neighbors, your friends, your dog, your niece, your nephew, whoever, whatever, your charitable organization. Somebody is going to get a check for that money. That policy will be paid. It's been paid for by you, and it has entitlements to be paid. The company was giving you how much? Nothing. But if something happened tragically in a close amount of time, the money's still paid off to your heirs. If you don't have a contingent beneficiary, again, it's Weinstein, Schultz, W-E-I-N-S-T-E-I-N. Please, feel free to put me down. Okay, we'll be happy to be your contingent beneficiaries. Okay? The point is, folks, that somebody's getting paid. Okay? Again, my disclaimer is, I don't know if you're insurable. I can't tell you that this stuff works for everybody. But I know it works. The question is, does it work right for each of us? In gaining control of your X factor, this is another area of opportunity for you. Are there any questions on it? Okay. We start to bring things to a close for you. We talked about a lot of different topics tonight. I appreciate your patience. The question now is, where do you go with all this information? What do you do from today forward? We hope that you don't procrastinate. We hope that you realize after tonight that some action might be needed and maybe it's time that you get serious about your retirement. We recognize the fact that there's a lot of resources out there to proceed on your own. But I'll tell you quite frankly, even after being in the business for 15 years, Jim and I don't know everything. I don't pretend to. but I have the resources available to me and to us to find out if those pieces of challenge to us that we don't know. We've come across a lot, so we hold ourselves pretty highly that we know a lot of stuff. Okay? But I won't tell you that I know everything. If you proceed on your own, I got to caution you, you don't know what you don't know. You may not know the questions to ask. You may not know what you're entitled to. One of the reasons why people hire us is to help challenge those questions, to tell you possibly what you don't know. I hope I shared with you some things tonight that maybe you didn't know about, or challenge the way you do things, possibly going forward. We'd like to discuss with you for a moment before you go how to use us as a possible resource to you. We recognize that our paths have first crossed tonight, and frankly, I don't know if I can help you. You don't know if you want my help. What I do know is that you have in your universe possibly a financial or a broker, financial advisor, an insurance agent, an accountant, an attorney, the guy at the water cooler, your brother-in-law. You got places to get information. The internet. You got all these different balls out there. The problem is that most of them do not communicate with each other. Your insurance agent doesn't know what your accountant's telling you. The attorney doesn't know what the financial person's telling you. The guy at the water cooler stopped coming to work because he was embarrassed because he lost everybody's money. And your brother-in-law, well, that's your brother-in-law. We hold ourselves out for our clients as kind of your personal CFO. We're here in the middle, and we want to be able to engage all of these parties and be either a primary or secondary resource to you. What do we mean by that? If you don't have an investment advisor you're comfortable with, we could be that investment advisor. You don't have the insurance pieces that we talked about, we can help you with the insurances. We're not accountants, we're not attorneys, but we work with a lot of them in the area, and we'll help bring them to your attention. If you have them, we'll work with them. We demand the information, God bless you, from our clients, that we talk with your accountant and your attorney to make sure that all these pieces are in place. If you don't spend your money, folks, your estate planning is going to be out of whack, and the distribution is imperative that you want it to go where you want it to go. And that's where the attorneys are going to come in to make sure the documents are in place to do so. We will help guide you accordingly. Okay? Primary or secondary, we'd like to be able to help. I'd like to reference the comment cards Maureen showed and shared with you earlier. Everybody could take those out for a second. I'd like to ask you for two favors before you go. The first favor is for Jim and I and our group. At the very top where the word comments is, if you could put somewhere in there the one or two areas tonight that you found to be the most valuable. You gave us a better part of a couple of hours tonight. You got to hear our presentation. What did you like? Tell us what you thought was the most valuable so we know we're doing certain things right or wrong. X factor. Yes, sir.
Listening to everything that you said, one thing I've never heard you guys indicate to us, the audience, I've been through a couple of the financial seminars, what percentage do you make from helping them? How does that work?
You're asking us how do we get paid?
Right.
Okay, that's a good question. We get paid in a number of different areas. Again, a lot of you have relationships in your life at this point. There's commission relationships. There's fee-based relationships. Okay? As I was going to address in a moment or two, by sitting down with us, we'll get exactly into how we do get paid. I view us as a supermarket of all kinds of financial resources. Okay? So we don't dictate to you how we get compensated. We'll try and find and match up the right ways and the right programs. Okay? We start the process of a relationship through the financial planning process. Okay? And we charge a fee to do the financial planning, and that fee will vary based upon the size of your assets. As I was leading to on the card, if you sit down with us and everyone's entitled to a complimentary consultation, in that meeting we will talk about what your needs are. You've listened to me, I want to now listen to you. You're going to tell me what you think is wrong, why you might think your retirement's in jeopardy, or basically, Bruce, kick the tires and tell us if we're doing okay. If you indicate at the bottom of the card by putting a phone number and a time of day to call, in the next 48 hours, Maureen's going to give you a phone call to schedule your own personal meeting with Jim and I. In that time, we'll talk about exactly some of the things I just mentioned. How we work, how we get paid, but more importantly, listen to your concerns. You might only need long-term care. Somebody else might like to have their portfolio reviewed and managed differently than what they've been doing. Somebody has a pension decision to make. Each one of those different areas might pay us in a different way. So I don't necessarily know the exact answer for you. Okay? But as I mentioned earlier, it's a supermarket of all services. Okay? We are, I'll say, non-proprietary. We're not here to sell anything First Union, quote unquote, has. Okay? I was an independent financial advisor for 3 years on my own. I joined First Union because of the leverage of the banking services to further enhance my relationships with my clients. But I don't, quote unquote, work for the bank. Okay? As Jim said, we're a, quote, subsidiary of the organization. This is our practice. This is how we do our business. You could talk to the other guys in our office, and they all do something different. We've gotten feedback. This is our 6th night here. We've gotten feedback. Oh, I didn't know First Union was doing financial planning. Oh, I didn't know that, these things were out there. Frankly speaking, some of First Union may not be doing this. This is what we do. Okay? We feel that our clients and you, and that's why we invited you here, are entitled to these services. And if you're not getting them from your current advisors, I'd like you to ask yourself, why not? If your investment person's not giving you some of the things we talked about, ask yourself, why not? If you indicate with a phone number, day, evening, hopefully both, Maureen will try you different times. We'll sit, we'll talk. After our hour or two session together, hopefully you'll be able to determine whether you think our team is the team of choice for you. If not, we'll part friends and we appreciate you coming in, but I challenge you, what do you have to lose? You gave us 3 hours tonight. Give another hour or two. We'll meet confidentially. We'll talk. If we can help, we'll tell you. If we can't, hey, believe me, I only want to work with people who want my help. If you notice on the card, it does not have a no anywhere. If you leave it blank, we're not going to call you. I have your phone numbers. The reason I ask you to put your phone number down is because you're kind of telling us you'd like our help. You'd like a phone call. We're interested. Okay? We've allowed you to select for yourselves to come tonight. You've seen what we're about. We just offer you the opportunity to take it one step further before you close the door on this chapter. Okay? If you put your number down, we'll give you a call next couple of days. All right? I leave you with these closing thoughts. An idealist believes that the short term does not exist. A cynic believes that the short term doesn't matter. But a realist believes that what was done or left undone in the short term greatly determines the long term. What this slide means to me is today is the first day of the rest of your financial planning lives. The power of the financial plan allows us to cast a ripple into your financial future, just like you throw a rock on a pond. If you don't like where your ripple is taking you, today's the first day you could do something different about it. We encourage you to sit down with us and talk further. On your way out, Jim will be collecting your cards. We have a brief certificate that we give out. What the certificate basically is for is a discount or an encouragement to sit down with us. Studies have shown in the next 48 hours, you're going to forget half of what we talked about. In the next 30 days, you'll remember less than 10%. That goes back to that procrastination. We'd like you not to wait longer than 30 days to sit down with us. So we're giving you a certificate for $100 off of some of our financial planning services if you come and meet with us in the next 30 days. Simply, it's to do you a favor to get you in before you forget why you wanted to see us. Okay? People say, call me after Memorial Day, call me after Labor Day, and we wind up spending the next 3 years chasing them down. They forget why they said yes. Okay? We don't want you to forget. We'd like you to sit with us while it's fresh on your minds. Okay? Lastly, on the back of the card, Maureen had mentioned, we do these dinners by invitation. We're only going to be here next Tuesday. We added one extra date because of the demand. We've seen about 350 people, which is terrific for us. We only do it by invitation. We do not put ads in the newspaper for the general audience. Okay? This is expensive. If you'd like somebody to attend one of our future seminars, put it down, please. If you don't have the information, you could give it to Maureen at another time. We thank you for it, and I think your friends will thank you for it. People say to me, you know what, you should have talked to my kids. I'm too old for this. Okay? You're never too old. And the fact and answer to your question of your kids, because we have, I assume, one here tonight, it's your responsibility to now tell your kids to sit down with us. Okay? We all want better for our kids. You've heard our story. Maybe we can help you, maybe we can't. Tell your kids, put them down, we'll get them in, we'll talk to them, whatever. Okay? End of my soapbox. Regardless of what you decide, we thank you. We wish you success in reaching your own financial dignity. Have a pleasant evening.